Well, friends, today's video is dedicated to such a difficult topic as how to forgive a betrayal. In one of my videos, I said that you don't need to confess, but if you did, it's not very clear how to live on after that. And very often you ask a person, why did you decide to tell this at all? Why? What was it for? I wanted to start from scratch. So, after such a confession, it's impossible to start from scratch. For the simple reason that you, taking out the callus, pass it on to someone else. Or with a knife in the heart, or a sprain, whatever you want to call it, and he continues to live with it all his life. It hurts him a little more, a little less, sometimes he forgets about it, sometimes he remembers, but no matter how much he says, I forgave you, it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Let's see how to be with this whole story, and is it possible? In some cases it's impossible. In some cases, everything is so sharp that the couple just diverges. But what is most interesting, is it just doesn't stop me from being surprised, the person who was cheated or the person who cheated, they repeat their plot again. That is, the victim somehow finds the traitor again, provoking him to cheat, because the victim provokes his partners to cheat. By the way, it will be necessary to shoot this video, of how they provoke to this cheat. Both of them are involved in the betrayal. And he and she create and push him or her to this betrayal. Why do they need it in their relationship? By the way, if she left, it is possible to understand that all the men are goats, they betray and leave. And she waited and created it. For example, because her mother said so, her father did so. And now she is trying to repeat this scenario in order to have this control over this situation. When she was little, she could not control it. And her mother cried sleepless nights that her father is not at home. Her father. And they cried together with her mother, and she could not influence the situation. Then, in adulthood, she creates it, and somehow fabricates it with her own hands. Her man begins to change her, and she has control over this situation. Now she is like the master of it. So, going back to what to do with this whole story, look how important it is to track why I create the betrayal of my spouse. Why do I do it? Let's see what to do next. I won't take these things as a post-traumatic stress disorder, although in some sense it has to do with it, because it's about a certain stress for a woman, very often shocks, or a man, whose wife cheated on him, about a certain shock, which a person has experienced a tragedy, loss of loved ones, a terrible fire, some military actions, some sexual violence. That is, something where his psyche is broken, let's say, everything, experienced incredible stress. Of course, we will not compare cheating on a spouse with post-traumatic stress disorder, but the therapy here is very similar. Similar in what sense? When a child with PTSD, after a shock, comes to a session with a clinical psychologist. What does a psychologist usually do with him? He modulates the stress situation with the child, again and again. To play it on toys, on sand, on leaves, on plasticine, on something else, it doesn't matter. So that the child reacts again and again, so that he loses it. And as a rule, children, for example, who have survived the war, and here they are, here is this scene, how his father and mother are killed, he plays and plays. He plays with it, and he needs to play it off. And therapy should be done within the framework of this betrayal, because betrayal is a stigma. It becomes a betrayal when you decide it yourself. In fact, there was someone's penis in someone's vagina, and another couple may not consider it a betrayal. They will consider cheating as being in love, but not in any way sexual. Sexuality, right? In no way. These sexual frictions, biological, they will be considered as, oh my god, think about it. A man went to pee, peed, pooped, that's it, it's a physiological need. Some women treat it this way. And for some, it's like, that's it. It's a knife to the heart. And now we're discussing who a knife to the heart or to the back is for, as a betrayal. So, betrayal, once again, is a kind of social assessment. I assess your act as a betrayal. Another girl, for example, can assess, you looked in that direction, I judge it as betrayal. What is in your understanding of betrayal? So, what do we do in this situation? We encourage spouses to talk about it. But this is when it comes to family psychotherapy, the couple came to the session. Since such happiness doesn't happen often, and after such things, they don't come to therapy. They try to keep it a secret, and the culprit of the event. He is guilty, he is the culprit of flowers, gifts, or some kind of excessively good behavior. He begins to portray himself as a beautiful knight, a macho boy. And in every way tries to please his woman. Trying to apologize by this, to win her trust back. And it really very often starts a new candy bouquet period. Which is what? One of the secondary benefits. Very often a couple provokes each other to cheat to refresh the brightness of feelings. He now becomes for her who this cheat is not just a victim, he also becomes a man in the eyes of other women. And if he needs some other girl, then he immediately becomes automatically more interesting to her, and these are a few of such feelings that tear her apart. These feelings are like contradictory. On the one hand, I'm ready to kill him. I hate him. I'm offended by him. But on the other hand, he's a little like grown up in my eyes because he's a demanded male if other females want him so much. So, when a couple comes, even separately, to me for a session, I offer people to encourage each other as much as possible to the scandal and to the conversation of these feelings. Why? Because sooner or later you come to some acceptance of what happened. And it stops tormenting you so much, it stops possessing you. Because if you keep silent, shut it up, it lives there, it hurts, it rots, and you continue to live and be motivated by your suppressed. I see it as, what is it called? Not a gnome, but a fat man, like a big heavy man under a layer of skin who is already so. He gets sick, rots sometimes, it lives its life, it's smelly, like a worm. If you don't let it out, you have to open it, clean it, wash it, take out the capsule, sew it up. That's what you have to do with it, to crush it, to forget, but to run away. And vice versa, to rumble, to speak, to shout, to make a scandal, to beat plates, to speak again, to speak. Once I was irritated by gays. And then I thought, well, damn, I'm a psychologist, how do they irritate me? Well, I quickly found out why they irritate me. Because they represent competition. Because they ignore me as a woman. And I love to be enjoyed. Well, because gays love diva, and now I'm approaching the age of diva, and I become a diva for them, and they start to love me more. Before they didn't love me like that. Well, and we had this mutual non-love. And it began to bother me. Well, how so? What is this intolerance? I began to watch gay porn. I watched it, until I finally accepted it. That is, at some point, that's it. At some point, I was no longer annoyed, and I began to like gay porn. That's all. What did I do? I began to raise something and provoke myself to experience it again and again and again and again, until it becomes something completely normal for me, ordinary. Exactly the same thing is needed and can be done with the fact of this sexual friction. I don't even want to call it a betrayal. If you have seen it as a betrayal, pay attention. A betrayal is a kind of stamp, a social stamp that lives in your head. This is one. Then try to find satisfaction for each other. How do you want to get some dividends? How do you want to balance this balance? With what? Maybe your own sex somewhere abroad. Maybe some swing party, so that your husband sat down and watched how you and 3 guys with burning eyes light a fire in front of him and you hurt him. How can you finally get this revenge on your family? Give him this revenge, that's all. These are the main recommendations. This is a search for some satisfaction and endless playing and talking about this situation. Until it is completely normal. Because there are Swedish couples, Swedish threes, who live together and change their partner. There are swing parties and parties where people do not consider it a betrayal. Or there are, for example, some legal lovers. Or Muslims have multiple wives. There may be an unlimited number of them. Quantity. Therefore, all lives, all restrictions live in our heads. That's all. What else do I want to say? I told you everything. I kiss you all and hug you, of course, and I'm hoping you like this video and will subscribe to my channel.